So now, over to you.
Good afternoon,
Aishwarya.
everyone. I'll be discussing about the post-operative care and management and rehabilitation after pediatric cataract surgery. Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. So, as we all know that pediatric cataract surgery has three main essential parts. First, the preoperative management, the intraoperative, and the postoperative. The postoperative medication is the first thing that comes to our mind once the surgery is over. And like any other adult cataract surgery, even in pediatric cataract surgeries, you basically give three topical medications. One is a tapering dose of steroids, which in our center is prednisolone acetate, which we start 6 times a day for the first week and gradually taper it over 6 weeks. Second is the cycloplegic. In adults, we use Tropac for maximum a week, but in children, we need to use hometropine or atropine, which are stronger cycloplegics for a longer duration of time, because not only does it help in relieving the pain, it also helps in reducing the inflammation, which in turn reduces the chances of formation of a visual axis opacification. And third, like any surgery, we need to give a course of topical antibiotics, which in our case is 4th generation fluoroquinolone. Coming to follow-up, now in adults, you may see a patient once or twice after the cataract surgery and then it's done. But in children, you need to have a strict follow-up schedule, which in our case is day 1 post-op, 1 week, 1 month, and then 2 to 3 monthly for the first 6 months, and then 4 to 6 monthly for the next 3 years, following which it can be done annually. This was similar to the one that was followed in the IATS, or the infant aphakia treatment study, where they had a similar schedule for follow-up. Children need to be followed up lifelong, because the surgery done at 6 months or 1 year of age can have implications and consequences which may present decades later. Now, there are multiple challenges in the management, post-operative management. First, we need to educate and motivate the parents, because they have a myriad of emotions surrounding them. They may be panicking, they may be distressed, they may even feel guilty or angry regarding the child's diagnosis and the cataract surgery. So we need to alleviate their distress, explain to them that this is a holistic and a comprehensive approach from the doctors as well as the parents to help the child reach his maximum visual potential. On the first post-operative day, you look for a red reflex on a distant direct ophthalmoscope. Now, what a simple good glow on a DDO can tell you multiple things. First, that the media is clear, that you have done enough and sufficient media clearing lens aspiration. Second, if the glow is good, you'll be able to appreciate 3 lines: a line for ACCC, a line for PCCC, and a third line which shows the edge of the IOL. If you can see 3 circles, it very well tells you that your IOL is very well placed. It's not indenting either the anterior or the posterior capsule. There is no vitreous coming from the posterior capsule. The IOL is in the bag and it's not coming into the sulcus. Third, what a good glow tells you is an approximate amount of a refractive error that may be there. And hyperopia of 5 to 6 can be detected by the type of glow that is present. Fourth, the fact that the pupil is dilated tells you that the medication was put properly in the child's eye, and the parents and the nursing staff have put and complied with the medication. And last but not the least, the fact that the child is opening the eye to see the DDO means that the suture was very well buried and there are no loose ends to make sure that the child is having pain or any discomfort. Secondly, what we do here at our center is retinoscopy on day 1 in unilateral as well as bilateral cataracts, and patching of the other eye. So what we essentially do is we remove the patch from the eye that was operated on the next post-op morning, and we put it on the eye that was normal or having the better eye, the other eye. So what it does is it sensitizes the parents towards an increased compliance for glasses and patching. If you have given the glasses to the parents in the hospital itself, they'll be more adherent to the schedule that is given, and the fact that the glasses are important will be understood by them. Also, the fact that there are multiple children doing the same thing in the pediatric cubicle or the pediatric ward that you have encourages parents to follow each other's views and wear the glasses and strictly adhere to the compliance that is explained to them. So what we see here is the post-operative day 1 retinoscopy that has been done. And as was seen in preoperative, the child is the most comfortable in the mother's lap, and there we do the post-operative retinoscopy. If the child has bilateral cataract, between the first and the second cataract surgery, we give glasses. The immediate glasses help in increasing the compliance. So what it does is we give plano in one eye and we give the retinoscopy in the other eye. It may not be exactly accurate, but it puts the thing into the parent's mind that glasses is must, and it must be a part of their normal daily routine. This is on the child on the left is a 4-month-old child with a plano in one and +8, +9 in another. And another child is a 4-year-old child with a plano in one and an executive bifocal in another. Post-operatively at 1 week, if we confirm the compliance. Now, how do you do that? When the child walks into the OPD or when the parent brings the child, if the child is wearing the glasses and has a patch on the child, this is a sure shot telltale sign that the child is compliant with the glasses as well as the occlusion. Another thing that you see at 1 week post-op is the fixation. We've seen in multiple of our cases that the child who had wandering fixation movements and was not fixing suddenly starts having a better fixation, a central fixation, and even if there was a preoperative squint, it starts reducing as early as first week post-operative because of the increase in the visual acuity. For older children, Cardiff or Teller's, relatively older children, Cardiff or Teller's can be done, and for older children, Snellen's visual acuity can be done. You need to re-explain the tapering of the steroids and the medication when the parents come to you. Post-operative, 4 to 6 weeks, you do an examination under EUA, anesthesia, and you remove the suture that you had put in the main incision, and you do a biometry repeat to see how much the axial length has grown, the keratometry has changed. You check the IOP, you do the refraction again, and you also see the fundus to see if there is no abnormal changes. It ideally must be done every 6 monthly or when you see an abnormal glow. And if there is a significant visual axis opacification in the same EUA, you should go ahead with membranectomy. The second part of the post-operative management is visual rehabilitation, which essentially has 2 arms. One, refractive correction, which mainly includes glasses and contact lens, and second, amblyopia management, which is basically occlusion therapy as far as gold standard is concerned. Now in glasses, it is especially important that the parents understand the importance of why children need to wear the glasses continuously, because we have undercorrected these children. These children are 6 months, 1 year, 2 years of age, and according to multiple formula, we have undercorrected the child up to +6, +7. And if they do not wear the glasses, they'll essentially go into, again, amblyopia, which is probably futile for operating the patient because the child is not wearing the glasses. It helps my case because I'm wearing glasses myself, so I can explain to the patient that it is necessary to wear it, although it becomes a problem in explaining and convincing the patients of refractive surgery. Going to sizing, this is an extra problem that is there in children which you do not inquire in adults. The large glasses can cause eyelashes to not open, and it may touch the eyelids. The child may not be able to open the eyes, so we need to ensure that the sizing is proper, and the rim sizing should also be proper, because if the child is lying down, the glasses may ride up, changing the back vertex distance and the retinoscopy itself. What we can do to manage this is wear glasses that have cable temples so that it can be snugly fit, and harnesses that are present overhead or behind the head so it can make the glasses stable on the child's head. Aphakic glasses are slightly more difficult because they have high power, around 20-25 diopters, causing all sorts of distortion. So specific glasses like lenticular glasses, we have power in the center, or aspheric lenticular glasses, which also combat the spherical aberrations, can help in reducing these distortions. There are also multi-drop glasses which have spherical central high power and a peripheral low power, which can reduce the distortion and help in cases with bilateral aphakia. In aphakic glasses, the frame should be small and the depth should be sufficient of the frame to allow these glasses to be put in those frames without pushing back on the eyelids. Contact lenses, there are 3 basic types of contact lenses: silicone, RGP or rigid gas permeable, and hydrogel lenses. The silicone lenses have the highest oxygen permeability and were followed in the IATS protocol. They give +2 diopter of overcorrection for children less than 2 years and bifocals with near eye in children more than 2 years. RGP lenses are used when silicone contact lenses power are not available, or in corneas that are small like microcorneas or cornea less than 9 mm. Hydrogel lenses can be used in older children because they are easily broken and easily damaged, so they are avoided in younger children. The second arm of the visual rehabilitation is amblyopia. Now, a preoperative stimulus deprivation and a postoperative ametropia or an anisometropia is the cause of amblyopia in pediatric cataract surgery. So 2 things you can do to manage it. One, provide a clear retinal image, which you're doing by doing the cataract surgery itself. And second is by correcting the ocular dominance. Now, occlusion therapy is the gold standard for amblyopia management, which can be either partial or total, and full-time or part-time. With increasing evolution of how amblyopia is responding to occlusion therapy, we are shifting from a full-time to a part-time occlusion, because even the ATS, the amblyopia treatment studies have shown that even in dense amblyopia, 6 hours is equivalent to full day patching, and 2 hours is equivalent to 6 hours in severe amblyopia and moderate amblyopia respectively. Another thing what part-time patching does is it increases the compliance of the parents, because they would not like to put the patch on the child for the entire day, but if you tell them 6 hours, they'll be more compliant to it. And thirdly, it also allows for the development of binocular ocular dominance columns, because as there is a time during the day when both the eyes are open, so those neuroplasticity can help develop binocularity if the surgery has been done before the fixation and the binocularity develop. Now, there are multiple objective methods called occlusion dose monitors, where there are miniature skin electrodes attached to the patch, which can actually tell you how much time the occlusion patch was put. There is another way of thermal sensing, where there are thermistors which are there in the patch, which can tell you how much the contact was there of the skin with the patch. So we can check how much the occlusion was done compared to what was actually prescribed. The occlusion has to be done such that there is no light coming into the eye that is normal or better. If the eye, you see the lower image, and if the light is going into the better eye, the child will try to look through that eye and the entire process will become futile. The IITS did 1 hour per day till 8 months of age, and after which they did either full waking hours right eye and the alternate day left eye, or full waking hours divided into half for the right eye and half for the left eye. If for 3 months there is no response to occlusion treatment, it is a failure of occlusion, which can be either the first and the most common reason being poor compliance of the parents, second, a later age at which it was started, third, a very dense amblyopia, and fourth, a cataract surgery that was congenitally present, leading to a very severe loss of vision. In recent times, an active vision therapy has also been used along with an occlusion therapy as an adjunct, as it helps in stimulating the neuromodulatory pathways involving dopamine, and thus helping in enhancing the plasticity of the visual cortex, which could be either monoocular or dicoptic. Now, complications and resurgery are a part and parcel of any surgery. If you've left the child aphakic, probably because a completely subluxated lens, or probably because the eye was too small, as Ayush mentioned, less than 17 mm for the axial length or less than 9 mm for the corneal diameter, then you may plan a secondary IOL when the eye has grown significantly enough and when these prerequisites for secondary IOL have been matched, which include sight, specular, and sulcus. 3 S that you need to remember. You need to see that the best corrected visual acuity is significantly better than the uncorrected visual acuity. You can use either, if the child is old, you can see the sulcus on the slit lamp biomicroscopy, or if the child is young, you can do an EUA and you can use an ultrasonic biomicroscope to see for the sulcus. And specular in older children, decent specular should be there for a second surgery to be done. Anterior chamber assessment, as always, needs to be done. The ciliary sulcus, if present, then a 3-piece IOL in sulcus is the most practical and the most physiological thing. And in older children, when you're planning for a secondary IOL, an optic capture definitely should be done because it enhances the stability of the IOL. In this case, you can see that the UBM is showing a good sulcus, and when we have put a dilating drops inside the eye, so you can see the sulcus all around when you put dilating drops, and after which you can put a multi-piece 3-piece IOL in this sulcus. So if there is no sulcus, then there are 3 options that you have: an anterior chamber IOL, an iris claw IOL, and a scleral fixated IOL. In cases when the sclera is weak, like in Marfan's, in Beale's, or in ophthalmic eyes, there it is preferable to avoid a scleral fixated lens. And in cases where the iris is slightly irregular and iris claw may not be an option, then ACIOL is a good option, but there has to be no pass and the AC has to be a deep with a significantly decent specular count. The corneal diameter sizing is an issue with ACIOL because it only comes in 2 specific sizes. So corneal diameter has to be between 10 to 12.5 millimeters. PI is mandatory to prevent glaucoma. Iris claw IOLs can be either anterior fixated or retrofixated. You can see here on the image on the left, there is an anterior fixated IOL, and the image on the right, we have inserted the IOL inside with a 5 mm incision, used a dialer to make it into the position, then used a lens holding forceps and enclawed one claw, and then clawed second one with enclavation forceps, and then sutured it. We are slightly skeptical about using scleral fixated IOLs because in patients where the aphakia is left are usually the patients where there is a high risk of scleral weakness, scleral abnormalities that may be present, and thus haptic extrusion and problems may arise. Thus, we only prefer SFIOLs in children more than 6 to 8 years of age. Complications are a part of the surgery, which may arise from 27 to 58%, the most common being the visual axis opacification. It may range from something benign as a peripheral axis opacification to something as malignant as phthisis bulbi. VO can especially be there when inadequate anterior vitrectomy has been done, where the retained hyaloid face may act as a scaffold for the proliferation of the lens epithelial cells, which can either be managed by a trial of cycloplegics, where you can give hometropine or atropine for a period of 3 to 4 weeks and see if there is any response to reduce inflammation and reduce the type of VO that is there. If there is no response, which is usual in the case of combined fibrous plus proliferative cases, then you can do a bimanual vitrectomy either via an anterior approach or via pars plana approach and remove it. Refractive shift is an expected change. How much ever you try to correctly target the IOL power and use all the AI-based formulas, regression, theoretical, you can never predict the axial length growth in children. They may be either because of the inherent growth of the eye or because of the incompliance of the parents. So a child operated at 6 months, left 20% under correction, may come to you at 10 years of age with minus 15. What you can do is an IOL exchange in those cases. A preoperative squint may become better with an improving visual acuity, but a post-operative squint may develop if the child is not compliant to glasses or occlusion, leading to a fixation preference of the better eye. Other complications include glaucoma, which is again rare, but is seen specifically in eyes that are small with overcrowding, in complicated surgeries, and in aphakia more than pseudophakia. Retinal detachment is very, very rare, but it has to be mentioned as a part of the complication. It has any sudden decrease in visual acuity on post-op needs to be seen on indirect ophthalmoscopy. Risk factors include high myopes, an incomplete vitrectomy, excessive manipulation, or resurgeries. The most important cornerstone of the entire process of pediatric surgery is explaining the prognosis and counseling the parents about the potential of vision and their involvement in helping the child achieve the visual potential. So to conclude, follow-up, you remember 2 Ps to check the progress of the child by seeing the visual acuity, by seeing the change in the biometry, and the power. You have to prescribe power at every 6 months. Glasses, you remember 2 Cs. It is critical that the child wears glasses all the time and that it should be correct power and correct fitting. Occlusion, you remember 2 Ts. It has to be total occlusion, part-time or incomplete occlusion. Incomplete occlusion of the eye is not going to help, and timing has to be seen. If it's 4 hours, 6 hours, part-time, 2 hours, that has to be seen. Complications, 2 As, always anticipate complications, so you are absolutely ready for it to act on it when they arise. Counseling, 2 E's. It is essential that you counsel the parents and that you have empathy towards their children. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Aishwarya. So she covered up